Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala Rasulil Kareem. Amma ba'd. Thank you very much, Sister MC. And so today, I think this is the fifth time we are meeting through this certificate course. And so now gradually moving towards more contemporary topics. And in the last week, actually, we discussed classical Islamic political theory, and in that lecture, we actually covered many aspects of the history of Islamic political thought, mainly focusing mainly on two important thinkers in the Islamic history. One is Imam al-Mawardi, who represented the mainstream Sunni political theory as we identify it, and his work Ahkam Sultaniya. And we discuss the principles of Sunni political theory, and what are the epistemological and ethical roots of that Sunni political theory. And in contrast, we also discuss Al-Farabi's political thought, and we identified it, or we projected, or at least tried to understand it as a rationalist tradition in Islamic history. And also we also discuss the fundamental epistemological ethical principles that Farabi followed in constructing his political philosophy. And finally, actually, as I remember, we actually discussed that Sunni political theory is more closer to the vision of democracy compared to the rationalist tradition of Farabi, when we evaluate both of those traditions in light of contemporary developments. Today, we are discussing counterpart to the Islamic tradition in the medieval world, which is classical Western political philosophy, history, and its evolution. So it's in this theme, actually, within 35 to 40 minutes, I am trying to cover almost 10 to 15 centuries of developments in political thought. So we are moving. I think in this presentation, I am trying to cover three different historical periods: the ancient political thought, and the early medieval political thought, and the late medieval political thought. And I will be in the final few minutes, I'll be touching the evolution of modern political theory as well. So it's a long journey in this presentation that we are going to undertake. And so I wish that I could explain the ideas more explicitly and clearly, inshallah. So these are the three important aspects or major dimensions that we are going to discuss today. The Greek political thought, I'll be focusing on Plato and Aristotle. Then I move to the classical Christian political thought, where I will focus on Saint Augustine and Saint Thomas Aquinas. And then religious reformation and its impact on political thought, I'll be focusing on Martin Luther. So this is a long journey. I will try my maximum to summarize the ideas of these three important pieces of Islamic political intellectual history. And so initially, the Greek political thought, Plato and Aristotle. When we discussing about political philosophy and its history, we always consider Plato and Aristotle to as the fathers of political philosophy in general. When we read the textbooks that is written in the Western context, or the mainstream political philosophy subjects actually start with Plato and Aristotle. So, following that tradition, we are also starting here. Though we have some criticisms toward that classification. So, initially, the political philosophy systematized in the Greek context, and the works and books exclusively written discussing politics within that historical period. That is the argument actually scholars uh, make when they consider Plato and Aristotle to be the fathers of modern political philosophy, because they argue both of the scholars are the first people who actually theorize politics as a separate sphere of human life, compared to other aspects like economy, social, society, education. So the politics separated, and it was exclusively focused uh, first by the Plato and Aristotle. So they are being considered, according to their argument, as the fathers of political philosophy. So if we focus on the context of Greek political emergence of political philosophy in the Greek, actually in that period, a community of scholars, or at least speakers, in the name of sophist came into the center, took the center stage, and they actually emerged to respond to the challenge of instability, which was prevailing at the time because of the Persian invasions, or Persian invasions and attack on the Greek city states. So there were an instability in the Greek states. So that instability or instability led to the many intellectual confusions. So sophists are actually were results of such instabilities. Sophists, like similar to postmodernists today, and they actually promoted moral relativism, saying that there is no any objective values, no any objective epistemological principles. Rather, the values and morality and knowledge are relative and subjective. And they also promoted a particular discourse of politics, saying that politics is all about power. So actually, Plato and Aristotle, both were philosophers, try to respond to sophist arguments and provide an objective, stable, ethical, and moral and political vision for the Greek society. So initially, both Aristotle and Plato define human nature as basically as rational, and also human nature as ethical, and both human beings are political by nature. So this definition actually provided by both Plato and Aristotle. This definition is one of the agreements among Plato and Aristotle at the time. So once they both defined human nature as rational and ethical and also political, and this led them to define human developments as an ethical development. So they actually synonymously use both rational and ethical, mean if the basic human essence is rational, then developing that rational faculty is the ethical and the basis of ethics. So as much as to act, your ethicality decided by your capacity to rational capacity. And so this both Plato and Aristotle provided a framework for ethical development based on the human rational capacity. So, and also another important contribution to political philosophy by the Plato and Aristotle is that both argued that political condition is fundamental to ethical and rational development. So they argued that politics is there just to empower and strengthen the ethical and rational capacity of human beings. So, to put it otherwise, both Aristotle and Plato argued that purpose of politics is educational. It's not just material development. It is not just providing luxury lifestyles. Rather, as we conceive politics today in the modern context, rather both Plato and Aristotle argued that politics is fundamentally about ethical and rational development of human being and moral development of human being. So because without politics, even they argued, without involvement in politics, a human being cannot become a fully matured person, fully ethical person. Actually, if you don't have an involvement in politics, meaning to say you are either God or either an animal, meaning to say that if you are a human being, you should involve in politics, because politics is partly educational. So meaning it means that politics is there just to develop institutions that help people to achieve their moral objectives. So they actually related politics and morality into a single framework, unless the politics is as in contrast to today's conception of politics. So Plato and Aristotle provided sort of provided a purpose to politics, and connected that politics with ethical and moral development. In this sense, Plato provided a solution how that politics can be actually institutionalized to achieve moral objectives. Plato proposed a more radical option, which we call philosopher king model, and so you can read in the materials anywhere in the online, something like that, because I don't have time to go into in that detail. But about the philosopher king model, but he provided that philosopher needs to become a king so that he will be able to, so the city and the people will be guided by true ethical and rational instructions coming from the philosopher, the person who have achieved highest level of rationality. He is the philosopher according to the Plato. But Aristotle provided a more realist political alternative, and he embraced a mixed constitution, meaning to say that he provided a political model there where almost all the segments of the community, there will be wealthy people, rich people, poor people, and also there will be educated people. And so a community has many the many segments of people with many classes. So Aristotle's model is somewhat incorporating all those elements into a single frame, and so he was a more realist in terms of providing his political alternative. Anyhow, what we need to understand in the Greek period, that Plato and Aristotle connected politics with purposes, connected politics with moral development and rational development and ethical development. This is very, very important that to take into account when we discussing the history and evolution of political philosophy. And then we move to the classical period, classical Christian political thoughts in Augustine, the rise of theocracy. You see, with the emergence of Christianity in Europe, you see the whole Christianization of Europe. Europe has become very Christianized, and Constantine the Great actually captured the power, and he embraced Christianity, and he announced that his kingdom will be, his power will be instrumentalized to spread and consolidate Christianity. So Constantine the Great actually merged the state and the church for the first time. And so, after the fall of Constantine, the Europe encountered severe disintegration. So communities become fragmented. During that the period of decline, the churches started to rise into power and actually captured the power in many European regions. And so, since communities are fragmented, churches started to provide stability, started to organize society. This happened in fourth and fifth centuries, actually third and fourth centuries in after the Christ. So, in that context, we see the emergence of Saint Augustine, who actually started to theorize the political role of the church, because in his time, church were increasingly becoming dominant, providing stability and protecting communities from further fragmentation. And so he wrote a very important book which we still read in political philosophy classes. Actually, the City of God. In that City of God, he actually provided a vision how church can become an institution that provides stability, political vision, and in direction for the Christian communities in the Europe. In that book, he actually provided, in that and some other books that he wrote, he actually provided different political vision compared to the what we saw in Christian in Greek period, where Saint Augustine actually defined human being as sinful by nature, following the Christian theology. And so you see that in Greek period, Plato and Aristotle actually saw human being as rational and has the potential to become ethical, and human being is purposive. But here he reversed all those Greek political or Greek philosophical ideas, and medieval Christian Saint Augustine provided a different picture, which is rather a negative picture about human being. He said human beings are actually sinful by nature, and so the church's main duty is to serve that sinful person and to liberate and all Christian. So if church duty is to serve sinful person, all Christians should take part a membership in church, and Christians should assist and participate in church affairs. So he actually, for the first time, Saint Augustine theorized the role of church as important as politics. So the real main institution, according to Saint Augustine, is church. So church is the only institution is going to serve human being from their sinful nature. So he actually emphasized and give much priority to the church, and he argued in the City of God that church is the only institution that has the potential to provide liberation for human being. So if he considered human nature being sinful and church duty is to serve people from those sinful nature, and in order to do that, all Christians should take part in the church activities. So if so, how did Saint Augustine consider politics? So according to Saint Augustine, political institutions are just ensuring peace in a sinful world. The world is full of sinfulness because the people are fundamentally by nature sinful. They are fallen people. They did mistake in the paradise, so God has thrown themselves, thrown into this world as a punishment. So the people fundamentally here are here to do sinful acts. So political institutions are just there to ensure peace from in the sinful world. Sinful man cannot liberate himself through politics. So politics is very, very instrumental just to provide stability in this world. But politics cannot actually liberate people from their sinful nature. Real liberation is a liberation from the sin. So that is only in the heaven. In order to achieve that end, you need to attach to yourself, attach to church. You need to work for church. So church is above politics. Politics is just instrumental to maintain the political stability in this world. But real liberation is from the sin, and it is can only be achieved in the heaven. Only way to achieve is to attach yourself with the church. So actually you can see here that St. Augustine actually degraded the importance of politics in human life and placed church in the role in a place which is above than the politics. Politics is just an institution just going to provide stability. Church is the real spiritual institution that you need to attach yourself. And so this is a very contrasting picture compared to the Aristotle and Plato, because Aristotle and Plato, as I explained to you, that they considered human being as rational, and your rationality can be developed and empowered through developing political institutions. So politics is part of human development according to Plato and Aristotle. But here he separated both. Politics is just a material thing. It's just try to provide peace in this sinful world. But real liberation can come only through church. You need to attach yourself with the church, because church is the only institution that can guide you to reach the heaven. So Augustine actually degraded the role of politics and separated politics from the spirituality. This is how the separation between the church and the politics started to emerge. And on state, St. Augustine argued the politics is all about lack of virtue, where hypocrisy and killing and manipulations are happening. The nature of the politics is just killing, manipulation, corruption. Why those are happening in politics? Because politics is a worldly thing. That actually God has created politics as a punishment to human beings' initial sin. The politics is a punishment, because that's why it's almost corrupted, manipulative. And so what we can achieve in politics maximum is just to protect peace, stability. So we can use law and power to control people from killing each other. That's the maximum extent that we can go. But we cannot avoid that politics we cannot actually clean the politics from corruption, because corruption and politics and manipulation are embedded. That is how God has created politics, and it's a punishment for human being. So even we achieve sort of a peace, kind of a peace in this world, St. Augustine argues that peace is not perfect peace. Worldly peace is just controlling the violence. But if you want a perfect peace, that peace can only be achieved in the heaven, not in this world. So we need to reorient our perception towards the heaven and achieving the true peace there. So only way to achieve the true peace is church. So the world state is providing a peace in this world. It is a relative peace. So what we should aspire to, it's a true peace, not the relative peace that state provides. The true peace is in the heaven. The church is the only institution that can guide us. So logically, St. Augustine argued that church is superior to the state. So everyone should help church to empower church in their capacity. So if everyone should have to help church, to empower church, to provide people or to guide people to reach heaven, then it is everyone's duty. So king also member of a community and member of a church. So hence he should use his power to empower the church. When you say though, you can see here the irony that though St. Augustine hated politics because it's a material thing and it's only provides stability in this world, not it doesn't guide us to go to heaven, but implicitly he actually says that since king also a Christian, everybody should help their church in their capacity. So king should support in his capacity to the church. So this is how he actually, though hated politics, he implicitly behind the door, behind the screen, he actually got this. He actually argued or theorized that the state should come under the control of the church, because since church is higher and above, state is lower in terms of their significance. So above, the in the hierarchy, church is on the top, state is on in the comes next to the church. So logically, St. Augustine argued that state needs to be controlled by the church. This is how the Christian theocracy developed and theorized by the St. Augustine. So though St. Augustine provided a different picture than compared to the Christian Greek philosophers, here I just in the first note I just share a few disagreements between Greek philosophy and medieval Christian theology. Greek philosophers Plato and Aristotle, actually their political philosophy was more focused on this world, but St. Augustine and the medieval Christian theology more focused on the other world, heaven. So they rejected the role of politics, rejected the material world, focusing only the other world, heaven. Greeks were more focused on this world. They believed that happiness can be achieved in this world through even involving in politics. Excuse me. Then the second important contrast is that Plato and Aristotle actually focused on human happiness can be achieved, but medieval Christian theology, as it is developed by St. Augustine, he projected that humans are basically sinful. Therefore, for that reason, humans cannot achieve happiness in this world. He can only achieve happiness in the heaven. And you see, the Plato and Aristotle more emphasized on reason, while Christian theologian like St. Augustine more emphasized on revelation. And Aristotle and Plato emphasized on the role of state in human empowerment, role of politics in human empowerment, ethical moral development. In contrast to that, medieval Christianity, actually, especially St. Augustine, emphasized the importance of church. Church is the important institution because church is the only institution that brings human being closer to God. Politics is a punishment. Politics is a material thing. It's always power, controlling, manipulation, killing. So politics is not going to bring us to the God. Only church going to bring us to the God, closer to the God. So in this comparison, St. Augustine concluded that church is more important than the state, and church is on the top of the hierarchy and state comes after that. So since in the hierarchy, state comes after the church in terms of spiritual significance, church has the authority to control the state. This is how logically St. Augustine developed the medieval Christian theocracy. And then after St. Augustine, the second most important political philosophy in the medieval Christian history is St. Thomas Aquinas. I think this name is quite famous, and as opposed to Saint Augustine, Saint Thomas Aquinas developed a very critical rereading of Christian philosophy and especially political philosophy. and he actually tried to reconcile the Greek tradition and the Christian fundamentals. So he tried to reconcile both, as we saw some Ibn Rushd did in Islamic history. And so we see the similar project was undertaken by this Thomas Aquinas in Christian history. So he actually argued nature is purposive, so God is manifesting in the nature through his creations, showing his power. And he actually argued achieving goodness and happiness in this life is possible. And it is, though he said that the sinfulness of the human nature and achieving happiness in this world is are not are two sides, are two different things. So he actually tried to bring goodness and sinfulness into a reconciled position. And Thomas Aquinas argued the world is governed by divine reason, and revelation complements reason. And so he argued revelation is going to guide us to how to achieve. Its revelation is all about the in Thomas Aquinas vision. It's about revelation is mostly talks about the other world, and reason is God has blessed us with the reason to manage this world. So he tried to reconcile reason and revelation as complementary through this argument. And in politics, he actually, unlike St. Augustine, St. Thomas Aquinas argues government emerged not because of an original sin, but human being is a social animal. He in this case, he's just following the Aristotelian definition of human being, and he argued the human beings are naturally good. Because of our natural goodness and tendencies, we try to organize ourselves through states. You see, St. Augustine promoted a different picture, says that state and politics is a punishment to the sinfulness of the human being. It's a God's punishment. But here, Thomas Aquinas revised that stance, arguing that politics is part of our our goodness, that human beings are good and like to work collective way and like to organize our social life to achieve our common interests. So those good tendencies actually pave the way for human being to involve in politics. So if our rule is right and just, and so rule is right and just when directed towards people's good, and bad when directed solely at the ruler's self-interest. So he argued that, anyway, though he revised the role of politics, Thomas Aquinas, he said politics is not as bad as St. Augustine portrayed it. Politics is actually doing a good thing by bringing people together and involving in some common shared interest. So that can make people's life easy. So politics actually has a good positive aspects according to Aquinas. But still he actually believed the church is superior to the state. It did not challenge that idea which was developed by the St. Augustine in the 3rd, 4th centuries. Though he revised the perspective of politics, he actually developed some positive outlook about politics compared to St. Augustine. He did not actually do that. He did not actually develop a positive or at least criticize the church role compared to the politics. He actually accepted that mainstream position. And after St. Augustine, the most important figure in the Christian political philosophy is Martin Luther, and he actually is famous for religious reformation, and his impact on political thought is immense. And when it comes to the Martin Luther, he actually in 14th and 15th centuries. He lived there, and he actually paved the way for the development of modern secularism in the West. Though he is a very religious person, His reformation and his ideas eventually led to the development of secularism in the modern context. Uh, Martin Luther also believed that man is basically sinful, and revelation can only help people to seek salvation, and faith matters, not actions. All Christians are here. The main contribution of Martin Luther is he just questioned the role and dominance of the church in interpreting the Bible. He said meaning of the Bible is accessible to all, unlike medieval Christianity, which actually promoted the idea that Bible and interpretation of the Bible is only exclusively the right of the church. So church has the right to interpret and teach Bible to all. So through that traditional institution, people should learn the Bible. But Martin Luther actually deconstructed that narrative and said that all Christians are praised, and meaning of the revelation in the Bible is accessible to all. So we don't need to rely on church to understand Bible, or for to understand, to get our salvation. Rather, people can directly connect themselves to the revelation, meaning to say in their Bible. And so we want church just to manage our religious activities. Church cannot church shouldn't provide, shouldn't argue that they are the only means to, only institution that provide heaven, guide the people to reach heaven. Rather, to reach heaven and to become closer to God is our personal relationship with the God, not that cannot be dictated by the church. So church is just an institution to manage the religious activities. And how to understand Bible in that sense, every Christian has the right to understand, and they have the capacity to understand. So we don't need church as intermediaries to provide us meanings and guidance. So he totally deconstructed the relationship of the Christian community with the church, and also he actually deconstructed the importance of priestly class to interpret the Bible. And so he argued that in that sense, logically, he concluded the church is not above the state, and both state and church are two institutions, perform two different duties. Politics manage the worldly affairs, church manage the religious affairs. So nothing connected to divinity. And so then again, he eventually said that we need to obey the state in all circumstances. All of this deconstruction process led to the civil war between the different European theological denominations. So eventually that led to the civil war. And so because of that civil war, one of the unintended consequences of that religious civil war is the emergence of secularism, because they saw that if religion is allowed to dominate the public sphere, meaning to say that it will always lead to the civil unrest, and it will always lead to the conflict in the public sphere. So religions needs to be separated, and religion needs to be kept out of public sphere, and it should kept in the personal domain, so that people can live peacefully. This is how the Reformation, though it is a religious Reformation, and Martin Luther is a religious person, he actually wanted people to believe and practice Christianity in the public sphere as well as the personal sphere. And he actually wanted to democratize the learning and teaching process of Bible, and through his reformative ideas. But secularism emerged in the West is an unintended consequence of that Martin Luther's project, because once he opened up and liberalized the Christian tradition, which actually led to the development of many new theological movements, and started to argue that it is also their arguments, their movements, and their ideologies also based on Bible. So which led to the more liberalized, democratized Christian theological environment, and created the civil unrest. So, unintendedly, Martin Luther's project led to the emergence of secularism. So, this historical process and evolution actually largely shaped the modern Western conception of religion in a religion in the modern sense. So, modern Western philosophies or modern Western political theory largely been skeptical about the role of religion in politics because of these historical narratives and memories. And finally, some analytical remarks, some comparative remarks between Islamic and medieval Christian theology. So reason and revelation, you see the Islam in the medieval world, actually even the rationalist tradition like Farabi also actually accepted reason and revelation, both accepted reason and revelation as a complementary sources to get guidance in terms of worldview and ethical concepts. But you see, in the medieval Saint Augustine, he totally relied on revelation, and he actually very skeptical of reason. And if you go to Aristotle and Plato, they only believed in reason and they never talked anything about revelation. So in Islamic history, you see both, even the rationalist traditions, they were incorporated. They incorporated reason and revelation. In political authority, you see in the Islamic world, it sort of never promoted a concept of theocracy. Rather, Islamic political theory, as we saw in the last week, Islamic political theory always promoted the centrality of Islamic law, but it didn't provide it didn't allow any class of people to dominate the political authority. Always the political authority, Islam argued, lies with the people. Unlike the medieval Christian theology, we say that political authority is in the institution of church. Though the state not for the namesake, the state was there, but the real power with the church, since it argued that church is the superior institution and it is which is in the hierarchy above than the state. So real authority with the church. And the concept of good life, both in Saint Augustine actually said that human being cannot achieve good life here in this world, which is a sinful world. Your happy life only can be achieved in the hereafter. But in Islamic worldview, we saw that Mawardi and Farabi even provided, yes, that we need to achieve our good life and justice in the hereafter, but that does not necessarily lead us to believe that this world is a misery or this world is all about sinfulness. No, Islam says that we can achieve happiness in this world and hereafter, but the important thing is we need to take the happiness in the hereafter into account while we enjoying in this life. So Islam is a balance in this perspective, saying that happiness can be achieved in this world and the hereafter. But medieval Christianity is different. As I said to you just before, its happiness is in the hereafter only, not here, mainly according to Saint Augustine. So these are some comparative remarks, and with this note, I will conclude my presentation. If anything, I can answer.